Early on in this corona crisis, one of my friends on Facebook shared this infographic, and I found it very helpful in determining for myself where I am. Am I in fear zone? Am I in learning zone? Or am I in growth zone? But one of the questions that I often find myself asking is, all right, I'm in fear zone on this issue, but could I be in learning zone? Am I pushing myself hard enough? I'm in learning zone on this, but could I be in growth zone? And maybe the harder question is, maybe I'm ready for growth zone on this issue, or maybe my spouse is ready for growth zone on this particular issue, but the other person or the other family members are in learning zone or in fear zone. What do we do when we're in different zones than our spouse or than our children? And it's been, on the one hand, incredibly helpful as a framing, and on the other hand, it's left me with a lot more questions than answers in terms of knowing my zone and knowing whether I really have it in me to stretch into a different zone.
No, I think that's really important. And I think, Atara, thank you for raising those questions. What is important is first being able to check in with yourself. And what we have developed is another version of this infographic for Torah observant couples, and it encourages reflection on the couple and where you guys stand as a couple. But again, the most important part, and we mentioned this in other parts of this series, is individual check-in has to come first. And then we can check in with each other's couple. And if you want to take a moment to, pause our video now and look at this infographic, or take time and go on the yoatzot.org website to look at it further, it to definitely take the time to do that. But what I want to bring forward here is that the questions that Atara raised: how do I know if I'm being lazy? How do I know if we're being lazy or in the wrong zone? Or what if two parts of the couples are in a different zone? And I think firstly, this is really, really important. It's very hard to label what is and isn't lazy at this time. Not only lazy, but any kind of negative behavior. We want to avoid, let's say, labeling each other in terms of negative behaviors. Hopefully everyone is doing their best to function during this crisis, and we need to practice as much understanding as possible, of course within reason. Okay, I'm not speaking about situations that are not within reason. But we need in our marriages, and similar, if two parts of the couple are in different zones, as with other conflicts or disequilibrium that a couple deals with, couples need to learn to practice good listening and empathy. We're always working towards empathy, which is being able to be present emotionally for the other person's emotional experience, okay? And we're gonna do this is such an important piece of a healthy relationship. We're gonna do a crash course of this in part 6 of this series. I think what's also important to notice here is that there is so much potential for learning and growth. And that's a statement with no pressure, of course, but what I'm seeing a lot in my clinic is that it is possible for, let's say, a person who has consistently been struggling with anxiety, and now since the rest of the world is also kind of out of whack in terms of there's a lot of, the whole level of anxiety in the world has risen. This person has already developed skills and is able to function within the world in anxiety, and they are feeling at this point that they're thriving, that they are able to pull on their skills, all of the resilience that they have developed over the years of struggling with their, we might call it, difficulty. And at this point in crisis, it's being put to good use.
Abby, a woman who was consulting with me actually mentioned that Hashem has thrown a lot of difficulty their way, and they have learned a lot of different coping skills, as you've discussed. And she has become a first responder for her friends through this crisis when it comes to figuring out feelings about mikvah in particular. And she's really, as you're describing, she has been drawing on that strength. She gave me strength even just telling me that story and telling me that about herself.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's actually amazing to see, and I think we'll keep seeing it, God willing. And the main thing in general, the main thing that I really want to just keep focus on is that I have faith that couples are experts on themselves. They know how each person works and how this whole thing called marriage works for them. And we need to call on that expertise during this time of crisis and put it to use. And again, if there are more case-specific questions that anybody has, please feel free to email me directly at abby@jewishintimacy.com. But in terms of how do we make this work for couples who are trying to find a derech, trying to find a path, there needs to be a weekly conversation. Since everything is so new and every week pieces are changing and shifting, okay, it's very important for couples to be able to reassess where they are, where they hope to be regarding communication, halachic observance, mikvah going, minyan attendance, shul. I know shuls here have opened in Israel. I understand that shuls in America are talking about opening and starting to open, and family interaction in general. And maybe monthly, maybe every other week, we need again to be kind to each other and to try our best to bring our best self forward in the relationship.
I want to close with a Torah thought that I think really fits with this message that you've been giving us. It comes from the mikveh waters themselves. You know, one of the messages that I receive from our mikveh waters, from water in general, water is the epitome of fluidity. Water is the epitome of lack of stability. And even before Hashem created the permanent earth, it was birthed out of this impermanence and this fluidity and this instability. And I think there is this message that on the one hand, you need to be ready to pivot, you need to be ready to change, and we are here to become and to become better people. But on the other hand, if it's just the fluidity and we're just like, all right, let's head into growth zone, let's head into learning zone, let's head farther, it could actually backfire. And we need that permanence. We need that dry land. And it's that balance between the dry land and the fluidity that is what really allows us to grow in life. My father, Rabbi Meir Sandor, quotes a story from Masechet Psachim, where there's a rabbi named Rabbi Nehemiah Ha'imsoni. He did this amazing Torah project. He was working on a theory, and he spent forever working on a theory. And at a certain point, he decided it wasn't working. And he stopped in his tracks. And his students turned to him and they're like, Rebbe, you spent your life, this is your life's work. How are you stopping? How are you not continuing to figure out this secret of Torah? And he said to them something that's so, so important, which is, Kashem shekibalti schar al hadrisha, kach akabel schar al haprisha. Just as I received reward on this seeking out, on this attempt, this Torah study, I'm also going to receive reward for stopping in my zone and knowing that sometimes we need to put the brakes on things. And it seems very counterintuitive, because shouldn't we be constantly growth? But we have to check in with those around, check in with ourselves, check in with those around us, and make sure that this really is the time for pushing forward, or maybe it's time for a little pause. And Bezrat Hashem then will get those strengths, pull up those strengths to move into the next zone at the appropriate time.